Welcome to the Reconnection Club podcast, the show that helps parents heal troubled relationships with their adult sons and daughters. I'm your host, psychotherapist Tina Gilbertson. Each week, I'll offer you compassion, clarity, and personal development tips designed to help you reconnect, not only with your child, but with yourself. Now let's get started. Back when your adult child was completely estranged, you might have thought that once you were back in contact, you would finally be able to relax again. Well, I've said elsewhere that reconciliation is like winning a prize that requires assembly, but comes with no instructions. In addition to being confusing, it can also require a lot of mental and emotional effort. Many parents in the reconciliation phase describe a feeling of walking on eggshells that is, in the words of some, exhausting. And worse than just feeling tired is the sense that something is still wrong with this picture. It feels like you're not supposed to feel anything other than happy and relieved to be reconnecting with your estranged adult child or children. But reconciling parents need to know that feeling fatigued is normal during the reconciliation phase of estrangement when you're constantly practicing new behaviors. If you've ever traveled to another country where the language and customs were different, you know that even if you were happy and excited to be there, you felt tired at the end of each day. That much novelty exercises your brain way more than normal. This phase of your relationship with your adult child may bear little resemblance to what it used to be. It's as though you're in a foreign country. So if you're feeling fatigued by the unfamiliar language and customs of this new phase of your relationship, first remind yourself that it's normal. Nothing is necessarily wrong with the picture just because you're working hard right now. But make sure that you have sufficient time to relax and refuel away from your child. You probably won't want to spend long stretches of time together right away. And again, that need for rest and recuperation doesn't necessarily mean there's anything wrong. What does feel wrong to some parents is having to check in all the time about what's okay and what's not okay with their formerly estranged adult child. And that's important to pay attention to. If it seems like your child is just too sensitive or is unnecessarily prickly or judgmental about small inconsequential things, you could soon start resenting the fact that you have to check in so much. It might feel unfair, like you're doing all the work and your child isn't lifting a finger to meet you halfway, and here's the rub, that might be true. But since we can't make your child feel or act differently than if the alternative is for them to disappear again, then you're between a rock and a hard place. To ease the suffering of that inherently tough position, it might help you to remember that, to some degree, respecting boundaries and being interested in the needs and feelings of others, those are normal relationship behaviors. The other person doesn't have to be prickly or demanding for checking in to be a good practice. When I was growing up, in my family, we did not check in with each other about much of anything. I don't recall ever asking if anybody minded if I left my homework in the middle of the living room, and my parents would never have said, even when I was an adult, "Is it okay if we ask you about such and such?" And yet, requesting permission and inquiring about the impact of our words and actions shows respect. These are things we typically do with people we don't know very well. In a crowded food court, if we're forced to share a table, we ask a stranger, "Do you mind if I sit here?" And a polite stranger, regardless of how she feels, will almost always say, "Not at all." We're eager to respect and accommodate people we don't know, but less inclined to do that with our loved ones. And that actually makes sense, because with people we know well, we use some relational shortcuts, taking for granted that there will be no lasting negative impact. But in some families, taking things for granted sometimes does lead to damaged relationships over time. Once you've been separated by estrangement, both emotion and logic dictate that you can no longer take things for granted with your child. And that is a loss. because at least for the moment, your relationship very sadly now resembles the one that you might have with that stranger in the food court. Is it okay if I put my drink here? Would you mind if I hang my coat over that chair? Etc. Fortunately, you already know how to be considerate of other people. The hardship here is not necessarily not knowing how to be considerate, how to check in. But for most parents I talk to, the real hardship is that they never imagined having to pull out those behaviors with the people closest to them, least of all their own children. That is a big adjustment for anyone. Before I move on, let me review what I've talked about so far. First, if you're feeling tired, fatigued, or exhausted during reconciliation, that is normal and expected. Most parents will feel that way if they're practicing new behaviors, like checking in. Second, checking in is not just something you have to do because your child wants to torture you or watch you jump through hoops. It is normal behavior in relationships that aren't currently close. Yes, it's unnerving, perhaps, and sad, and nothing prepares you for your child to feel like a stranger. But even though that's true, in the reconciliation phase of estrangement, it is also normal. As long as you're both growing, it won't always be this way, but it may have to be this way for a while. For more support with reconciliation fatigue, you might want to go back and review episode 63, What You Resist Persists. Many parents understandably resist the strangeness of the reconciliation phase and the work it feels like they have to do, and the idea that it can't just be easy again right now. If you're feeling this way, do have a listen or re-listen to episode 63 at reconnectionclub.com/63. Last but not least today, I believe that the greater part of what causes reconciliation fatigue for many parents is struggling with their own emotions, the uncertainty, the lingering hurt, the fear of going back there, the worry, and the anger at being subjected to all those other emotions. So whenever you're feeling exhausted, ask yourself, what is it exactly that's making me tired? And am I really tired? Or am I resentful, angry, fearful, hurt, or all of those? If you discover that you're wrestling with a big complex of emotions during reconciliation, please think about getting help sorting through it. Your adult child is almost certainly not the right person to help you with that, but see if you can lean on a compassionate counselor or therapist, your spouse or partner, a cleric, or a trusted friend. Just make sure that person doesn't get distracted talking about your child and what he or she is doing, instead of helping you feel your feelings in a safe and protected space. I often say that reconciliation is a marathon. Far from a one-time event, it is usually a process that requires time, energy, consistency, and patience. I wish you could enjoy immediate comfort and ease in your reconciled relationship with your child, but try to make peace with having to go the long way around obstacles for the time being. If you stay the good course and give yourself enough time to rest and recuperate in your downtime, then over time, closeness and trust will be able to grow anew. Until next time, remember that you are a loving, lovable, and still growing human being. So please take good care of yourself. Bye for now. If you've enjoyed this episode of the Reconnection Club podcast, I invite you to check out reconnectionclub.com. The Reconnection Club is for parents at any stage of estrangement from their adult, child, or children. So whether you've just realized there's trouble between you, you've been living with estrangement for years, or you're newly reconciled but still walking on eggshells, the Reconnection Club is your essential resource for information, support, and continued personal growth. With our courses and workshops, expert interviews, monthly Q&A calls, and a friendly, active community, the Reconnection Club is a wonderful place to be for anyone suffering the pain of estrangement from an adult, child, or children. So check it out at reconnectionclub.com.